Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about adding muscle mass and why how much you can lift or focusing or worrying about how much you can lift is actually doing very little for your efforts of adding muscle mass. If you're just focused on weight and you're trying to put as much weight as you can, you might get to the point where you have to stop because you're fatigued or because form and execution is breaking down, but it might not actually be to that level of intensity that we're requiring here. If you do enjoy the video, please drop a like. If you have any questions throughout, throw them down below. If you haven't already, go ahead and do subscribe so you can keep up to date with the future videos. Let's go. If you've been training for a while, if you've been in the gym environment for a while, if you know others who train, you've probably heard or maybe even been asked the question before, how much do you lift, bro? Or maybe they don't use the word bro. But you've maybe been asked or heard someone ask how much they lift. Now, whether that's a genuine question, whether one person's interested in another person's ability to lift X amount of weight, or whether it's a bit of an ego move from one individual to see if they can shift a little bit more weight than the other. We all know that kind of individual. But here's why how much you can lift really means fuck all when it comes to actually adding muscle mass. Number one, form and execution is going to be very key in your efforts to build muscle mass for a number of reasons. One, good form and execution of exercises is going to allow you to have very good control over that movement, which is then going to help with stuff like the quality of the stimulus that you are giving that muscle. And building muscle mass is a stimulus driven process, right? It requires a certain level of stimulus which it then adapts to, and that adaptation is building muscle mass. Alongside that, good form and execution is then going to allow you to get a good range of motion. Right, again, if you're having control within that good range of motion, again, that's just leading to an overall good stimulus. You're also making sure stuff like safety, okay, is near the top of that sort of priority list, okay? And safety is key within training because adding muscle mass takes a lot of time. And if you set yourself up for injury or if you get an injury, you could be out for weeks, months, and that's just going to set you back. So your form and execution, especially if you're a beginner to training, your form and execution needs to come before you're even concerned about how much weight you are shifting, okay? If you're focusing on how much weight you're shifting in the gym before your form and execution, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Secondly, intensity, okay? So we talked about building muscle mass being a stimulus-driven process. Intensity is going to play a big part in that. You want to be training at a certain level of intensity for that stimulus to be of good quality. That intensity, let's say we use a scale of 0 to 10, right? 0 being you've not done anything, you're completely fresh. 10 being you cannot do another single rep of that set. Complete failure, right? Your intensity of training on each set wants to be, let's say, anywhere from like 0 reps left in the tank to maybe like 3, right? So if you're working between sort of 0 or 1 to 3 reps left in the tank for each set, your intensity is going to be good. Now, training to that sort of intensity can take time. Getting to the point where you really only have 1 or 2 reps left in the tank, right? Where you're really driving while trying to keep form and execution strict and trying to get those last few reps can be a skill and take time to acquire, okay? A lot of time when people start, when they think they only have 2 reps left in the tank, they really have 4 or 5, right? It takes a little bit of time to build and get used to. Just focusing on lifting as much weight as you can, right, is actually going to set you back from the intensity, okay? A lot of people get confused by this because a lot of people think, well, if I'm shifting more weight, then my intensity is going to be higher. And to a degree it is, but one thing that they're then missing out on is actually the ability to go to the place where you truly only have maybe 1, 2, or 3 reps left in the tank, right? Because if you lift more weight, you're actually going to accumulate quite a bit more fatigue, right? Within that muscle, just within the nervous system. So the stimulus to fatigue ratio can sometimes not be fantastic, right? Because if you're just lifting a lot of weight and then you're getting fatigued very quickly, you might not actually be getting to the point where you can really take a good amount of weight for you. It's obviously going to be individual dependent, to that point where you're 1, 2 reps away from really breaking down form and execution to the point where you're providing that good stimulus, okay? If you're just focused on weight and you're trying to put as much weight as you can, you might get to the point where you have to stop because you're fatigued or because form and execution is breaking down, but it might not actually be to that level of intensity that we're requiring here. 3, volume. Volume plays a big part in adding muscle mass, okay? Progressive overload is key. So progressive overload is that increase in overload or volume over time, right? Now, if you're just focusing on how much weight you can shift, you are missing out on big areas where you can force progression, right? If you're focused on just how much weight you can lift, obviously weight over time might increase, yes, which is a form of progressive overload. However, you also might find that weight progression slow down pretty quick when you're just focusing on just sheer weight and strength. But secondly, you're also probably missing out on stuff like reps and sets that you can build up and progress over time if you're just focused on strength and weight, right? And taking advantage of reps and sets over time can be a big part and useful way to add that progressive overload, okay, which then is going to lead to, or should we say, play a part in hypertrophy. 4, recovery. Recovery plays a big part in adding muscle mass. If you can't recover from what you're doing, from your training, then you are going to struggle to add muscle mass, okay? You're also going to struggle to progress things on a consistent basis if you can't recover, right? So, one of the reasons why focus on strength can hinder recovery is because, especially if you're doing just big movements, focus on shifting a lot of weight, that is going to tax your nervous system quite a lot. That is going to require very good recovery protocols and good time to just let that body come back down, come back to normal before you attempt another lift like that. So if you're constantly or consistently focused on big lifts that are going to tax that nervous system, you might actually just be struggling to recover, right? And if you struggle to recover, like I said, you ain't going to build muscle mass very well and you ain't going to perform very well, okay? However, if you are just focusing on big lifts, lifting a lot of weight, and that allows you to recover better, and then you can consistently progress things in the gym at a lot quicker pace, you're going to be doing a lot better job at adding muscle mass. And then lastly, more like smaller things to think about, but if you're focused on just strength, okay, and how much weight you can shift, usually that means you're stuck in a very small rep range. Usually that means you're stuck in, let's say, a 1 to 6, 1 to 8 rep range, right? If you're just focused on how much weight you can shift. And that isn't optimal for adding muscle mass, right? For adding muscle mass, we probably want to vary that rep range, okay? Because you can use a variety of rep ranges to build muscle mass. Let's say anywhere from like 0 to 30 reps can be used within training, to provide a good stimulus to build muscle mass, okay? Again, it's going back to that sort of stimulus versus fatigue that I was talking about when we were talking about intensity, right? With the lower rep ranges, which I'm not saying you can't include, you can, but if this is your main focus, with the lower rep ranges, you're going to accumulate a lot of fatigue, okay? Because again, we're shifting a lot of weight. They're normally big movements. That's going to tax our cells pretty quickly, especially the sort of nervous system, right? That's if we're focused on shifting a lot of weight in the lower rep ranges. If we do that, our fatigue's accumulating quicker before we're getting a good stimulus, right? And again, building muscle mass is a stimulus-driven process, okay? So that's not ideal. Vice versa, just for comparison, if we're doing only high reps, okay, nothing but high reps, the same thing's going to happen, right? We're going to fatigue ourselves pretty quickly, right? Because we're just doing high reps before we're probably getting very good quality stimulus, okay? Because if we just start with high reps and all we're doing is high reps, we're going to have to do a lot of volume before we get to the point where we're actually going to be, getting to that 1, 2, 3 reps left in the tank sort of level of intensity, okay? So we might be accumulating a lot of fatigue in another sense, right? In another way, before we really get that good quality stimulus, okay? So if we use varying rep ranges, what it allows us to do is almost find that good balance between stimulus and fatigue, right? Where we can manage fatigue quite well, but we're also getting a very good quality stimulus. So there you have it. If you're wanting to build muscle mass, here Are there certain factors you need to focus on and think about, and you need to move away from the focus of how much weight can I shift? Because how much weight you can shift alone means fuck all. One thing you will likely find is that people who have a decent amount of muscle mass can probably shift quite a decent amount of weight, or once you've accumulated more muscle mass, you yourself will obviously eventually be able to shift a lot more weight, right? But be patient with that process, okay? Hey, if you want to lift 100, 200 kilograms on a certain movement, but you can't do that now, be patient. Focus on your main goal, which is likely, if you're watching this video, accumulation of muscle mass, and eventually you'll get close to those numbers. You've got to respect the process if you're wanting to also be able to lift X amount of weight, okay? But if your goal is accumulation of muscle mass, focus on these factors. Don't focus on how much you can lift, bro. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please drop a like. If you have any questions, throw them down below. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Take care.